It's February 8th, 2017. It's a chilly night in Brooklyn, New York. School has already been canceled the next day for snow. The goddamn Washington Wizards are a good team, and a young me is in attendance at the Barclays Center to see them play. This was my first ever NBA game, and although I was a big fan of the league, I was just 10 years old. I wasn't as tapped into every little factoid, especially not about a 9-44 Nets team. So as a result, early in the first quarter, a certain play broke my young mind.
The dribble, lost it for a moment. Shot clock winding down. They give Lopez the three. That's deep.
Wait. Brook Lopez shoots threes now? Sorry, this is supposed to be 10-year-old me. Dad, no way Brook Lopez shoots threes now. I know there was an ongoing three-point revolution, so to speak, but I didn't know this. He was shooting a lot and missing a lot, to the point where I was asking him to shoot in the clutch. Giving context to assure my 11 YouTube viewers that yeah, I said that because he sucks at shooting. But little did my naive ass know, Lopez had reinvented himself that season. He was a shooter, a good one at that. Just 2 weeks prior to that game, he had a 7 tray ball night. That's OD. Lopez is one of many big men who added an outside shot to their game in the mid-2010s. Kenny Atkinson was hired as the Nets coach ahead of the 2016-17 season, and having done the same thing with Al Horford in Atlanta, saw Lopez's shooting potential and said, you know what? Let that fucker fly, big fella. What followed that suggestion is something that I don't even think Kenny Atkinson would have anticipated. That season, Lopez shot 387 threes, more than Buddy Hield, Kyle Korver, and Kevin Durant. This was more than him just turning his deep twos into threes. Atkinson had lit a spark under Lopez, an addiction perhaps. This was a perennial 20 points a game post player who turned into 7-foot Klay Thompson in the matter of one season. His identical twin Robin Lopez wasn't chucking threes. What's Team Nature got to say about this one? Somebody get a genealogist. I think I got an enigma on my hands. No, like seriously, can someone please make their PhD on Robin Lopez hook shots? Brook Lopez, from 2017 onward, has shot nearly half of his shots behind the arc. It's a change that, whether he intended for it to happen or not, completely shaped the latter half of his career and aged his game for the better, in my opinion. His spacing on offense with elite rim protection on D made him a dream fit alongside a non-shooting superstar big like Giannis, with whom he won a championship in 2021. He's one of many NBA stars we'll see who made deliberate changes to their playstyle over their careers to remain as effective as possible whilst playing a different role. Now, to be clear, I'm not going to classify guys who straight up improved as, quote, different playstyles. Obviously, the defensive specialist Kawhi in his early years had a different playstyle than the MVP runner-up Kawhi putting up 25 points a game, but it's because he improved, not because he just felt like it that year. Look closely enough and you'll see that many of your favorite superstars underwent some metamorphosis to their playstyle. One of my favorite examples is how LeBron has shape-shifted over his time in LA. In the 2020 season, he just got his co-superstar in Anthony Davis, and as a result, didn't need to score as much. Lacking one great point guard, Coach Frank Vogel opted to throw LeBron and AD in a jumbo starting lineup, with JaVale McGee joining them at center and Avery Bradley and Danny Green being 3-and-D guards on the wings. LeBron, as a result, was truly, not de facto, their point guard that season. He averaged over 10 assists, leading the league for the only time in his career. Fast forward a couple years to 2022, when AD spent half the season on the injury report and their well of washed up centers had dried up, LeBron decided to play center and lead the league in scoring with a near career low in assists. And sure, this can all be chalked up to the never-ending roster turmoil of the 2020s Lakers, but I still find it so cool to see the adjustments LeBron made be reflected in both his stats and Basketball Reference position estimates. Thanks to Rob Pelinka giving the 2022 Lakers a center rotation of washed DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard, LeBron collected all 5 Infinity Stones. I like this. Another good example is Shaq. Yeah, Shaq was always Shaq. The guy always had the same strengths and weaknesses, but you can see the aesthetics change a lot as he slowly but surely put on the LBs as his career went on. According to this Reddit post, he gained 80 pounds from his rookie season to year 10. In college, listed under 300 pounds, he was much more of a methodical post player, using footwork and length more than pure strength, and had moments of running the floor where he almost looks Giannis-like. Then, in Orlando, he gained a fair bit of muscle, still had that Shaq bully ball playstyle, but also had his moments of mobility. Then at his peak weight in LA, he was literally unstoppable in the paint, but when he ran the floor, he had the announcers acting like they were cavemen seeing fire for the first time. All of these Shaqs were top players in their games, having their own differences but maintaining an elite level throughout his career. Well, not his whole career. Because of course, there's old, fat, unathletic Shaq who couldn't do much of anything except make wide open layups and dunks 2 feet from the basket. Shaq's limitations with age drew him closer to the basket as he couldn't do much work in the post. Some of his contemporaries, however, preferred stretching their game out as they got older, starting a more jump shot heavy shot diet. It's better on the knees. I may be averaging 3 points a game on 49% true shooting as a starter, but I'm the franchise GOAT, goddammit. Let me rock out and shoot my long twos in peace. Foot on the line preferably. Kevin Garnett came upon a crossroads toward the end of his career. The longtime mid-range assassin had opted to make that the primary aspect of his game, more than ever before, as he couldn't really create off the bounce anymore. But while he took up this jumper-heavy diet, a three-point revolution was taking place. This was the 2015-16 season. Kevin could have had a really cool late career development as a three-point shooter, as many of his shots were as deep twos could get, but old Kev wasn't moved by the younger bigs around him and stuck to his two-pointers. Had he stayed in the league for a few more years, I've got no doubt he would have been swayed, as during this time it seemed like there was a new star big man every single year who picked up three-point shooting as a new habit. The one I briefly mentioned before was Al Horford. He and Brook Lopez had crazy similar relationships with the three ball, though it took Horford a bit longer than Brook to morph into the 3-and-D center role that has defined his beautifully aging game into his 40s. Like Lopez, who came after him, Horford was influenced by then Hawks assistant Kenny Atkinson to start hucking this level of threes. While he was never an elite scorer before, he had a nice inside game and soft touch for mid. In the 2016 season, Horford started to take his reliable mid-range shots and stretch them out a few feet, but like Lopez, this transition laid the groundwork for a long career as a supporting offensive player. Horford found second wind as a shooter, having the second highest three-point rate among prevalent centers since 2016, just a smidge higher than Lopez and only trailing bitch-ass motherfucker Kelly Olynyk. In recent years, his outside shot has allowed him to remain effective on offense while cutting out many of the post-ups from his early years, especially on a team like Boston, which won a ring in 2024 spamming threes, of which many were shot and made by Big Uncle Al and his lunging set shot. I wonder if Kenny Atkinson feels any regret these days when the Cavs play these two old-ass guys and they splash threes in their face. Lopez and Horford are two of the 10 oldest active players in the league, and they've made it this far probably thanks to Atkinson's suggestions. Those guys took the trend the furthest, but there were plenty of bigs who picked up three-point shooting recreationally, you know, here and there at a party, as opposed to those guys who almost got sent to rehab. Boogie Cousins and Anthony Davis each started hucking threes the same year as Horford, but since their other offensive skills were so great, it didn't overwhelm their game, just another tool to make them more versatile. With modern age big men like Jokic, Embiid, Kat, and Porzingis coming into the league around this time, most of the league's bigs with pre-existing soft touch started shooting threes from like 2015 onward. Chris Bosh hopped on the trend before the Curry revolution in 2014 to help the Heat space the floor. Serge Ibaka started shooting threes in 2015 as they always had either Steven Adams or Inez Freedom on the floor, both of whom couldn't shoot a lick. Marc Gasol had his highest scoring season season ever in 2017, the same year he acquired the strap, and that floor spacing proved vital when he took a lesser offensive role with Toronto. His brother Pau did the same in his later years, though to a lesser extent. Nikola Vucevic has become a great shooter. He started shooting them in 2018. Hell, even Big Zebo, Zach Randolph, started shooting them with the Kings in his final season. I find it so fascinating to see how guys like him got with the times and switched their style drastically right before they hung it up, a contrast to stubborn KG and his deep twos. Now that big men shooting threes is quite common and not some anomaly, we don't see many stretch big renaissances, so to speak, in today's game. You can either shoot when you come into the league or you can't. However, two guys have defied that in the mid-2020s, Bam Adebayo and Onyeka Okongwu. You know, I always thought Bam had a three-point shot in him. He always had this short midi pull in his bag, and his form and free throw percentages were signs that him shooting threes wouldn't be the worst idea. However, through 6 seasons in the league, he had just 62 three-point attempts under his belt. He kinda soft launched his stretch big status toward the end of 2024, going 14 for 28 in the last 17 games, but now he shoots them a lot, and I'm not sure he should be. In the 3 years Bam has shot threes, his points per game and true shooting percentage have both gone down. He's scoring less with less efficiency. No, of course, that doesn't account for the value he creates being able to space the floor, but I don't know, Miami's offense has been bottom half in each of those 3 seasons, just something to consider. But Bam's transformation in shot diet pales in comparison to that of Onyeka Okongwu. This was a guy who took damn near all his shots in the paint, not even mid-ranges. Hell, he didn't even shoot threes at Chino Hills. They had 13-year-old LaMelo doing shit like this in games, but Onyeka said, nah, let me take this mid-range shot instead, fucking loser. Hey Hawks, I was a stretch big in high school, where's my tryout? But now, he's shooting threes at a Splash Mountain Brook Lopez rate. I looked at the Jazz Hawks box score from this year and had the same reaction as I did at that Nets game. The fuck? Okongwu 8 for 14 from 3? Somebody call the National Weather Service. Like Bam, his efficiency has gone down, but he was shooting all layups and dunks before. Of course that's gonna drop. Ultimately, he's scoring more than ever and has made the Hawks offense more versatile as he transitions into a feature role rather than being Clint Capella's backup like he was for too long. Oh, and while we're on the topic, shout the out to Andre Drummond for shooting a respectable clip from 3 this year. He's played around with becoming a shooter in the past. I remember this IG post he had when he made a few threes in his early days with Cleveland and acted like he was Steph Curry now. Yeah, he didn't make another 3 for 4+ years. But now he is Steph Curry. At the time of writing this, he has a better 3-point percentage than the supposed shooting GOAT, and nobody's talking about it. But again, the modern NBA has seen the shooting big man trend cool down. Not that less big men are shooting them, rather less big men are trying to add it to their game after the fact. And there are also guys who came in as stretch bigs who have now taken it out of their game. Luke Cornett and Goga Batadze come to mind. They've found much more success and playing time since they've cut the threes out and focused on the simple things. It's common practice for teams to have their young bigs shoot more threes to see if they've got something there, but my guess is that Donovan Clingan won't be shooting threes in a few years. Sometimes you just gotta be an old head and say, you're 7'2", get your ass in the paint. You know who didn't need coach suggestions to become an elite shooter? Steph Curry, though it did take him a few years to become the transcendent figure he is today. He shot the same crazy high volume from 3 at Davidson, but over his first 3 years in the league, he shot more mid-ranges than threes. It wasn't until 2016 that he stopped the mid-ranges and shot a majority of his field goal attempts from 3. And as we know, 2016 was the same year he broke the sport and may or may not have started a trickle down that has Andre Drummond taking threes a short decade later. But rookie Steph was interesting. I'm not sure what caused him to be so timid with the outside shots that year. You're a starter and shooting 44%. Why are you shooting less threes than Jason Kidd, the guy who earned the nickname Asin Kidd because he had no J? Although wait a minute, Jason Kidd might be one of those guys I'm supposed to be talking about. Jason Kidd had a beautiful playstyle change in his later years. While he was never a prolific scorer, his season high points per game was 18.5. He took this pass first mindset to another level later on, becoming an uber efficient 3 and playmaking guy in the Mavs championship team. He was top 10 in 3-point attempt rate in 2010 and top 5 in 2011. 2011 when they won the ring. No exaggeration, Ace Kid became a 3-point specialist. Look at him work in the finals, just making the right plays on a consistent basis, taking his open threes, and being the perfect connecting piece while also being their lead playmaker. I'm noticing a lot of these shooting transformation guys winning championships. If only Rashawn Holmes shot some threes for the Wizards last year, we would have gone all the way. Kid was one of many superstars who had to adapt their games as they got older or joined teams with better players. Like when Gary Payton and Karl Malone tried to save their sorry-ass careers and played alongside Kobe and Shaq for an awesome Western Conference championship season. These guys didn't really change their game though, they just took less shots. Payton was eventually successful winning as a role player with the Heat. Karl was not. And they say karma's not real? The same can be said about Grant Hill, who, after many injuries with the Magic, took a lesser role on the Suns and stretched his career to age 40. He became a defensive specialist in Phoenix, finishing with DPOY votes in a few seasons, but didn't win a ring unfortunately. Still an awesome showcase of perseverance through chronic injuries. It's always nice to see guys rewriting their career path at an unexpectedly old age. By age 30, Ron Harper was a solid stat stuffer on some decent Cavs and Clippers teams, but not somebody who was having a remarkable career. Someone who'd get a nice solid diamond card in 2K My Team or something and be a good, not great guy for hoops junkies of that era to remember. That was Harper's legacy until he joined the Michael Jordan Bulls. Harper made a drastic change in play style, going from a 20-point per game starter to a 7-point per game starter, and embraced a new role as a big defensive-minded point guard who won 5 rings with the Bulls and Lakers, all after his 30th birthday as I mentioned. The way Harper was able to put aside his previous reputation as a scorer in order to win championships is an underrated sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that not many stars are willing to make, as once you get a taste of 20 points a game, it's hard to turn around and cut that by 2/3, even when you're guaranteed to be playing for rings like Ron Harper was. Andre Iguodala had a very similar career path to Harper. At age 30, he had been a quality starter his whole career and even had an all-star to his name, but signed with Golden State and became a bench player. However, this was a sacrifice he would have been dumb not to take, as like Harper, he got a handful of rings all after his 30th birthday. And they're not the only NBA stars to have been presented with such a choice. The various big threes we've seen in the 21st century have always had one odd man out. Somebody that had to learn to be a star to his teammates' superstar. Ray Allen comes to mind as somebody whose playstyle changed upon entering a stacked team. In his early years, like Steph, he shot more middies than threes and was equally known for being a high flyer as he was a shooter. He eventually did become the generational shooter we knew him for, but also did much more in his time in Seattle, still taking a heavy dose of middies and shooting just 39% of his shots from outside. Once he joined the original Big Three in Boston, he was the one whose scoring dipped the most, going from 25 to 17 points a game in their first year together. Not only was he taking less shots, he averaged a career low in assists too. He just had the ball less. And as is usually the case with older sharpshooters, he slowly took more and more of his shots from three in the later Boston years and especially the Miami years. The prices you gotta pay for rings, on full display once again. And maybe in his second ring, he taught a thing or two to his teammate Chris Bosh on how to be an ideal third option. Bosh was kind of always destined to be the odd man out when this Big Three was formed in the summer of 2010. Not that he wasn't a great scorer, but when one guy is a perpetual 25 points a game guy and the other is LeBron James, yeah, you're taking a back seat, buddy. He took a few less shots upon joining the Heat, but made no major changes to his play style until he joined the stretch big movement for the last few years of his career, turning those middies into threes per usual. I attributed a lot of the stretch big thing to Curry's influence, but Chris Bosh could be held equally responsible. He made the change in 2013, 2 years before the Warriors became the Warriors, and he shot 37 threes along their championship run that year. There's no doubt his success served as a proof of concept for other stretch bigs to be. It's a shame blood clots took his career so early, as although he was much more than a shooter, the new three ball in his arsenal would have aged his game very well like it has for his contemporaries. injuries. And while Ray Allen kinda set the blueprint for Bosch, Bosch most certainly set the blueprint for Kevin Love's transition into the Big Three in Cleveland. Like Bosch, Kevin Love quickly became the odd man out when teaming up with LeBron and another co-star, though that designation wasn't as obvious as it was for the Heatles. It was on a mid-T-Wolves team, but Love was fresh off a season averaging 26 on good efficiency. I suppose his age, knockdown three ball, and just being a big man made him a better candidate for a decreased role than Kyrie, but to that point in their careers, Love was certainly the more prolific scorer. Alas, Love took one for the team. He scored nearly 10 less points, cutting out a lot of his post-up attempts while keeping the same volume from three. But Love's transformation went beyond the box score. It was a physical one too. Love lost around 30 pounds prior to his arrival in Cleveland to help him transition into a new role where he'd play on the perimeter more than ever. He was still good for a beautiful post fadeaway or a scrappy putback while he was on the Cavs, it just came less frequently, and it was the expenses he paid for a ring. Alright, how about some old head shouts for good measure? Earl the Pearl Monroe was the leading scorer on a finals contending Bullets team in 1971, but he struggled to adjust after a trade to the Knicks as he was sharing the backcourt with another Hall of Fame guard, Clyde Frazier. Monroe's points per game cut in half in his first year with the Knicks, but he eventually learned to coexist with Frazier as they each averaged 20 points a game in 1975 and made the All-Star team. And wouldn't you know, in his first full season with the Knicks, when he was still taking a back seat, they won the championship. Monroe would end his career with the Knicks, being a headline player for nearly that whole time. A season where he passed the torch, so to speak, was when scoring machine Bob McAdoo joined the team in 1977, who himself also had to learn to be a role player in his later years. McAdoo came out scorching hot at the beginning of his career, winning 3 consecutive scoring titles from his second to fourth seasons, winning the MVP award in his third. He played on a number of different teams after his initial stint with the Buffalo Braves, dealing with some injuries and not really finding a true landing spot. After rough exits with the Pistons and Nets in 1981, McAdoo had foot surgery in the offseason and was a free agent months into the next NBA season. However, the Lakers called him up around Christmas time, and the ringless 30-year-old McAdoo had been given a present to revive his career. McAdoo was a mid-range sniper in his early years, the definition of a small ball 5 before such a term was popular. He was like an old school version of Nas Reed, who was obviously a lot better too. With the Lakers, he played a lot less as Kareem and Magic ran the show, and his role became much more off-ball than it was before. The Lakers used him as like a movement shooter, having him come off screens for mid-range shots all the time. When he wasn't knocking those down, he'd do the dirty work too, as any good role-playing big should. In 4 seasons with LA, McAdoo averaged 12 points a game off the bench, playing just 20 minutes a night and winning 2 rings in the process. F all these big guys. Let's get tiny. Nate Tiny Archibald was another young scoring champ who, due to injuries and coaching changes, had some wacky scoring fluctuation and eventually took a lesser role. Archibald remains the only player in NBA history to lead the league in both points and assists per game, doing so in just his 3rd season. However, my good old friend Bob Cousy was his coach at the time and told him after that season he had to let his teammates get theirs if they wanted to win something. He resigned after just 20 games and they ended up winning 3 less than last year. In a season cut by injuries, Tiny put up half as many points, going from 34 to 17, but regained his momentum in the following years and made some more All-NBA first teams. Tiny's weird down year in 1974 seemed to be behind him, but in the 1977 preseason, he had another brutal blow. Acquired by the Buffalo Braves ahead of the 1978 season, Tiny wouldn't play a game for them due to a preseason Achilles injury that ended his season. Pushing 30 and appearing to have lost his early career luck, Tiny, like McAdoo, found a second chance with a historic franchise. The Celtics acquired Tiny for the 1979 season, a year before Larry Bird made his debut, and when Bird got there, he was the perfect point guard to complement him for their first ring. The guy who once put up 26 shots per game in a season never put up more than 10 in Boston, becoming a more efficient scorer as a result, but really being more of a playmaker. A core memory of mine is grinding away at 2K15 domination mode for a 91 Nate Archibald card. Not really sure why I did that, but I felt that was necessary to share. It seems like these older players definitely had less of an ego. I can't imagine any player who averaged over 30 points a game in his second season being willing to give that up for a bench role. I suppose today there aren't many obvious dynasties who current stars would want to ring chase with, and the one team who probably will become that probably won't need it with how young they are. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins signing with the stacked Warriors for pennies after his Achilles tear is a clear example of this. It just didn't work in the same way like it did for these guys. These players will always have my respect. Sure, in a lot of these cases they're joining the dark side and letting other stars do the heavy lifting they couldn't when they had their own team, but if such a decision was that attractive, we'd see a lot more people doing it. The reality is, it takes a lot of pride to give up those precious shot attempts even when it's adapting to a role that'll help your team the most. Sure, some of these guys were old or injured and had to adapt, but the rest of them were making a sacrifice to win more games. That can also be said for another big three superstar. Wait one moment. James Harden. Harden's change in playstyle can be explained by a quick look at his basketball reference page. From the moment he arrived in Houston, he was one of the game's best scorers, year in, year out. However, when Mike D'Antoni was hired as the Rockets coach in 2017, his all-gas, no-breaks philosophy caused Harden to become the scoring king. He won 3 straight scoring titles starting in 2018, including a 36-point-per-game season in 2019 where he shot over 1,000 threes. Harden was an analytics lover's dream through and through, which was no accident considering the radical basketball philosophy of GM Daryl Morey. But in 2021, the wheels fell off in Houston, and Harden was swiftly traded to Brooklyn to form the NBA's next and perhaps most talented big three ever, at least scoring-wise. Like in the cases of Allen, Bosch, and Love, Harden was the one in that trio to sacrifice his shots the most. His scoring dropped by over 10 points per game his first year in BK, putting up a putrid 24 points a night. But he probably would have won a ring if not for injuries he and Kyrie experienced in the 2021 postseason. This was the start of Harden's new playstyle that he's used for most of his 30s, taking less shots and averaging near double-digit assists on a yearly basis. Freed from the shackles of Morey ball, Harden also started taking more middies. And by more middies, I mean some. He took the turn your middies into threes cliche further than anyone. By 2020, he shot just 20 mid-range shots the entire season. This is a guard who led the league in scoring, and he shot a mid-range shot just once every 4 games. Harden was the basketball equivalent of a 3 true outcome hitter, like Joey Gallo if he was an MVP level player. He was always an elite playmaker. He led the league in assists in 2017, but took on the generational scoring load when the Rockets were pushing the limits of heliocentrism. He's become less effective as he's aged, losing some of the burst that made him elite at the rim and getting to the line, but has adjusted his game enough as a true point guard to remain an All-NBA candidate at age 35. I'd love to see Harden get a ring in his late 30s, taking this playmaking thing even further. Out of necessity, the Clippers in 2026 have him scoring more than he has since Houston, but I think an efficiency maxing Harden averaging 15 and 8, let's say, on a contender, that would be a treat. Another elite scoring guard who started to pass more as he got older is Jerry West. Honestly, West is one of the most underrated players in NBA history. He and Elgin Baylor were both superstars on the Lakers team that got too comfortable coming in second place for the entire decade of the 1960s. For the first 8 seasons, West was primarily a shooting guard who still got around 6 assists per game, kind of like Harden. But don't get it twisted, he was a scorer, being one of those guys who unequivocally would have been a great 3-point shooter had he played in the right era. They called this dude Zeke from Cabin Creek. I think I'd retire. But for the last 4 years of his career, West dialed back the scoring a bit and became a near double-digit assist guy at point guard. He also upped his reputation as a defender, making a bunch of all-defense first teams, though the award didn't exist for a lot of his career, to be fair. And during this change, he remained among the best of the best players, and for what it's worth, won his only championship the same year he led the league in assists. I don't know, guys. But nobody, I mean nobody's playmaking transformation holds a candle to that of Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt's first few seasons need no introduction. He was and remains the most ridiculous volume scorer the NBA has ever seen, benefiting from his anomalous size and athleticism as well as some pretty ridiculous pace of play to put up 50 points per game. This wasn't a respected playstyle though, as Bill Russell's Celtics consistently took him down in the playoffs, and voters didn't award these high-scoring seasons with MVPs to match. Still needing a ring after years of high-scoring failure, one man set out to save Wilt from his stat-chasing and lack of team success: Hall of Fame coach Alex Hannum. Hannum was hired as Sixers head coach ahead of the 67 season, and as a former soldier, knew he wouldn't back down to the requests of his superstar center. Hannum told Wilt simply, "You gotta swing the pill, motherfucker." And this wasn't Hannum's first time coaching Wilt. He got hired as the Warriors coach in his final season there and got him to relent a little, averaging a career-low 37 points and career-high 5 assists. But Hannum, much to the dismay of Chamberlain, wanted a bigger transformation this time. Chamberlain didn't get along with Hannum. They got in arguments over his aggressive coaching style, but eventually the results just started to speak for themselves. In Hannum's first year, Wilt shot just 14 shots a game. His career average to that point was 31 for context and put up an astonishing 7.8 assists per game. Wilt's Sixers went 68-13 and cruised to the NBA championship, including a 4-1 gentleman's sweep over Bill Russell's Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. This was Wilt's most optimal playstyle, and voters agreed, awarding him his second straight MVP despite the lower scoring. He averaged just 24 points a game, but on 68% shooting, by far the highest points per game for someone of that field goal efficiency. He carried this on to the next season, leading the league in total assists. Russell and the Celtics would get their get back in the 68 playoffs, but Wilt won his third MVP thanks to his near triple-double average. His wild assist totals cooled down when he joined the Lakers the following season, but this was more due to his diminished role in the offense, as he didn't go back to shooting 30 shots a game either. And in LA, he would focus on his defense even further, winning Finals MVP in his second title run in 1972, despite just averaging 19 in the series. Wilt's drastic transformation and the winning that immediately followed is all you need to understand that scoring isn't always everything. The guys scoring huge numbers like that are usually doing so out of necessity, and almost always start winning more when they get better teammates and can start leveraging their scoring threat into better shots for others. But being a team player is hard. You need to have enormous confidence to even play in the NBA, and when you can score 50 points a game, it's hard to tell yourself that you shouldn't. Very few players are awarded the opportunity to shoot to their heart's content. Most of the league, especially in today's game, is stuck with limited touches and relegated to hitting their open threes most of the time. But sometimes, desperate enough teams can turn your favorite role player into a shot chucker overnight. Like an edgy middle schooler offering you vapes in the bathroom, these teams have taken some of the most benevolent, good role players and turned them into the dirty volume scorers they always dreamed of being. Few players have flipped the switch like Mikal Bridges did in the middle of the 2023 season. Bridges earned his keep in the NBA real quick. He was a rugged forward who literally never missed a game and provided great defense and shooting for a blossoming Suns team. He looked like someone who, if nothing else, would be a key role player on great teams for a while, as through 4 seasons he had a DPOY runner-up finish to his name and a finals appearance as a starter. However, the Suns took a dip in 2023, having a record just 4 games above 500 at the trade deadline, and so they sacrificed Bridges among many other assets to pick up KD from the Nets. Mikal Bridges had been scoring noticeably more that year with Phoenix. In the 15 games leading up to the trade, he averaged 22 points a game. His career high for a season was 14. Going to a recently blown up team meant Mikal could continue his high usage and shot volume, but I don't think anyone anticipated what he proceeded to do. Brooklyn Bridges, as he was quickly dubbed, took the league by storm. His signature three-point celebration went viral. He was dropping 30 balls on a regular basis. The guy who was known as an elite 3&D player was now creating shots for himself at an insane clip, averaging 26 points a game on 48, 38, 89 splits. Was Bridges a star now, or was this just a flash in the pan? The numbers suggested the former, but there were some warning signs that said, yeah, this playstyle probably wasn't sustainable. Bridges averaged just 2.7 assists per game with the Nets that year. That's an incredibly low number for someone using pick and rolls at the same rate as point guards. He was also shooting the ball a bit unsustainably well. His start with the Nets was even more ridiculous than his final numbers suggested, because his jump shot heavy diet tapered in efficiency as the season went on. These things led to what happened in the next season, where Bridges struggled a lot in his only full season as the clear #1 option. His scoring and efficiency fell off significantly, and the Knicks paid a pretty penny to get him closer what he used to be, a third or fourth option with great defense. Now Bridges stands as kind of a mix between his two former selves. He's more of a scorer than he was in Phoenix, creating his own shots like these one-legged middies, but he's ultimately back to being a role player, a transition that he invited with open arms as he gets to play with his boys from college. But you know how the saying goes, when one Nets tank commander leaves, another one emerges. I don't really know if anyone's ever said that, but it's true about NBA PR master Michael Porter Jr. MPJ's career started very much like Bridges, though he came in with very different expectations. He was the #2 player in his high school class, and likely would have gone that high in the draft if not for a concerning back injury taking away his only college season at Mizzou. Had he gone to a different team, maybe MPJ would have been a star all along, but for his first 6 seasons, he was contending for championships alongside Jokic and the Nuggets. Porter was the undisputed third option in that Nuggets offense, establishing himself as one of the game's best shooters and consistently being fed buckets from Jokic. His video game-esque jump shot and low assist numbers earned him nicknames like Michael Never Swing the Rock, The Possession Ends Here, and Never Seen a Shot He Didn't Like Porter Jr. Though credit to him, he remained a highly efficient scorer even with this hilarious shot selection, a testament to just how good of a shooter he was. But he was never the guy, and through 6 seasons, it didn't look like he'd ever be. He didn't have much of a dribble bag, and at 6'10", he isn't the type to blow by you and get to the rim with ease. He was an elite supporting player, and we accepted that as okay. That was until the 2026 season happened. MPJ was dealt to the Nets in the 2025 offseason, as the Nuggets preferred Cam Johnson's cheaper contract and more well-rounded skill set. The Nets, being a rebuilding team whose main tank commander has been on the IL and whose rookies all aren't dominant scorers, have given MPJ the ultimate green light to start this year. Porter is averaging over 25 points a game this season, shooting 40% from 3 and 58% on 2s on career high volume in both areas. He's driving twice as much as last year, though it still isn't a ton at around 5 per game. Porter hasn't drastically changed his shot profile. He's just the focal point for the Nets offensive system. Kinda like how Lauri Markkanen isn't on the ball a ton, yet averages north of 25 points by having elite size, shooting, and off-ball wit. It makes sense when you think about it, I just wasn't sure Porter could handle this much of an offensive load. Oh, he passes now too. 3 assists ain't much, but it dwarfs his career average of 1.4 in Denver. I damn near threw my phone when I saw he had 6 assists in the first quarter. Who is this, Josh Giddey? I said that Wilt had the best playmaking transformation ever earlier. I might need to rethink that. Not even 3 months into Brooklyn MPJ, and he's gone from an overpaid asset Denver had to attach a first-round pick to in order to get rid of, to a guy who teams are realizing, wait a minute, this guy isn't a Jokic merchant. He can do that for us too. There's a good chance someone will pay the Nets handsomely to get his services at the deadline. This is the exact scenario I dreamt up when the Wizards acquired Jordan Poole. Let him cook and get us trade assets in return. CJ McCollum, anyone? The only question about trading for MPJ is he going to be able to relinquish his high scoring numbers and go back to third option basketball? Let's ask him ourselves. Michael, would you rather average 25 points a game but play on the Nets the rest of your career, or go to a contender but have to shoot 10 shots a game?
I'm not going to hold you, bro. Both of them would hurt a heart, though.
You know who's had to make that tough transition already? Quentin Grimes. Grimes had a similar saga to Bridges and Porter last year. The fourth-year guard seemed to find a stable home in Dallas, having a consistent spot in the rotation, but he was flipped at the deadline for Caleb Martin. Grimes found himself with a Sixers team who had absolutely nothing to play for except keeping their draft pick and stars who were all injured. This was a guy who took 70% of his shots from three and was nothing more than a fourth or fifth option role player for his first 3 seasons. To start year 4, he got a taste of self-creation in Dallas, but what happened in Philly was something few people could have saw coming. He was relatively quiet in his first 8 games in Philly, remaining a role player alongside Tyrese Maxey, but in Game 9, he exploded for 44 points on 24 shots. He flat out looked like a superstar, firing pull-up threes off screens, getting to the rim, cooking Steph Curry for midi pulls. This guy looked legit. Tyrese Maxey's season would end 1 game later, leaving Grimes to take control of the offense for the final 22 games, 18 of which he'd play in. In those 18 games, Grimes averaged a smooth 25, 5, and 5 on 46, 37, 78 splits. Unlike Bridges, his assist numbers weren't indicative of someone playing on ball when they shouldn't be, and his great performance gave the Sixers a bit of a dilemma headed into their next season. They already had Maxey and rookie standout Jared McCain coming back from injury, and drafted shooting guard VJ Edgecombe number 3, the pick they got from Grimes' tank commanding efforts. Like how Bridges took a backseat with the Knicks, Grimes' role has been a mix of both his pre and post breakout playstyles. He's come off the bench for much of the season, serving as a backup creator but also sharing the court with Maxey for much of the game. If nothing else, Grimes' breakout showed that he could be that type of high usage player in a pinch, and giving him bench minutes to run the show is valuable, but ultimately he's not forcing the Sixers to change their future plans. Harrison Barnes and Jeremy Grant are 2 more names who come to mind as 3-and-D role players who got thrust into a primary scoring role. Though with these fellas, they actively sought that opportunity. Both left their original teams in free agency. Now, to be fair to Barnes, he was all but cut when the Dubs signed Kevin Durant. They simply couldn't re-sign him. With how much money teams had to spend in the 2016 offseason, he got a bag from the Mavs, around $35 million a year in today's cap standards, and he midi-pulled his way to an inefficient 19 on a bad team. You gotta respect it. He got his bag and went back to being a solid role player just 2 short years later. Jeremy Grant though, oh boy, do we have a scoring addict on our hands. Grant was a key player on the 2020 Nuggets team that made the conference finals and hit free agency in the shortened 2020 fall offseason. He received identical 3-year, $60 million offers from both Denver and the rebuilding Pistons, and Grant chose the opportunity to be a first option over the chance to compete for a ring. Had he been willing to remain a role player, he presumably would have been on the team for their 2023 championship. Here's what we got instead. Grant led the team in scoring by a lot. His 22 points per game was 10 higher than his previous best. Grant contracted a gnarly case of wannabe KD syndrome in Detroit, shooting a fair bit of OD hang pulls with his long frame. This version of Grant had a pretty fun game to watch, all things considered. It's always interesting to see how generic 3-and-D role players like him can break out on a bad enough team. But ultimately, this was a pitiful team. They finished 20-52 and were rewarded with the number 1 pick, Cade Cunningham. After sharing a lot of the shots with Cade in his rookie year, the Pistons dealt Grant to Portland to give Cade full control. Portland had visions of Grant being their quote-unquote third star that Dame needed, so he maintained his 20-point per game output, but taking a more efficient shot diet. Grant is a classic example of somebody who tasted high usage and never looked back. He still averages 20 for the Blazers, coming off the bench and having a role more akin to Lou Williams than, say, Jaden McDaniels. To be fair, the Blazers aren't the most competitive team, but it's widely known his defense has fallen off since his scoring increased. And that's no slight to Grant. If you're scoring more, you'll have less energy for defense. My argument is simply that he shouldn't be trying to score 20 to begin with. It is fun to see how a change of scenery thrusts someone into a new role and gives fans a new perspective on what they could be as a player. And it can be more fascinating to see how they evolve after they play on those bad teams to see which elements of their new game stay and which elements go. However, the same transition can happen in reverse. Guys who were given the keys and lauded as the franchise savior, who eventually fizzled out and had to adapt to life on the fringes, or in this case, pulling corner threes. It's a tough transition to make, both mentally and physically, but here are two guys who I think did it best. Two of the top 4 picks in 2014's draft are still kicking it as some of the best role players in the league. However, it took them quite a few years to come to terms with this identity. Let's start with the top pick, Andrew Wiggins, as his adjustment was more extreme. If you didn't know, Wiggins was one of those can't miss prospects expected to define his generation, and his NBA career started off as such, starting all 82 games for Minnesota and winning Rookie of the Year. His points per game increased in each of the next 2 years, up to 23.6 in 2017, but despite the counting stat improvement, there were flaws in his game that were getting hard to ignore. He scored with average efficiency at best, had a negative assist to turnover ratio, and was considered one of the worst defenders in the league, embarrassing for someone with the athleticism he possessed. Add in the fact that the Wolves had made little progress in their rebuild, and it makes sense why they put less of a focus on their supposed young superstar. After they traded for Jimmy Butler in 2017, Wiggins took more of a back seat, but struggled in his decreased role, showing little improvement as a shooter and defender. His shot selection still consisted of too many mid-range pull-ups because he was pretty bad at them, and not enough shots at the rim for someone with his bounce. He bounced back a bit to start the 2020 season, and the Wolves flipped him to the Warriors for D'Angelo Russell. It was there he slowly remodeled his game for a lesser role he'd have no choice but to fill on a contending team like the Dubs. They were without Steph in his first season and without Clay for his second, so they weren't some ultra competitive team, but in that meantime, Wiggins started to figure it out. As did many good role players before him, Wiggins cut down on the midi pulls, became a good 3-point shooter, and started giving a shit on defense. Once the Warriors were back to contending in 2022, the new Wiggins was fully here. He was one of their most reliable players that year, leading them in total minutes played and having his most efficient scoring season. Ironically, it was taking a step back that finally awarded him with the accolades we all anticipated him to get. Andrew Wiggins was named an all-star starter that season to reward the red hot Dubs. And because of some K-pop guy, but I don't know, man, let's pretend that didn't happen. He deserved it. Wiggins is now in the Heat, this time being flipped for his old pal Jimmy Butler, and he's solidified his reputation as a rock-solid role player, one of the league's best, even if no more all-star nods came his way. At age 30, he should have another 5 or so years of playing solid D and hitting 40% of his threes in his tank. Even when the visions of him as an NBA superstar didn't come close to panning out, Wiggins didn't complain. He accepted his fate and became one of the best players of his kind. Shouts out to you, 22. And how about Aaron Gordon's transformations? Yeah, there was 2 phases to this operation. Picked 4th by the Magic in that same 2014 draft class, Gordon didn't have immediate expectations to turn around the franchise like Wiggins did. He was drafted mostly because of his athleticism and potential, displayed in his insane dunk contest performances before he was an impactful player in games. You would have been kind of crazy to think that Gordon had elite scoring potential coming out of college, but by year 3, Frank Vogel and the Magic had him handling the ball a lot and playing small forward to develop him for his future. Gordon drove to the hoop a fair bit and took a lot of threes, though he wasn't very good at them. He was certainly improving as an on-ball player, but the Magic couldn't do better than a couple first-round exits during that time period. In a fire sale at the 2021 trade deadline, the Magic dealt Gordon to Denver, who were amidst much different times than Orlando. Contenders don't have time to wait for you to develop your skill set over multi-year spans, so the Nuggets had Gordon keep it simple. He stopped handling the ball so much, focused his energy on defense, and let Jokic find him in the dunker spot as his primary method for scoring. This AG was more of a big than ever, and his playstyle was much more suited for his new team. He always had this in him. It wasn't like Wiggins where he had to adapt a lot. He was just expected to do more in Orlando. That would be a fine end to Gordon's story. He won a championship in 2023 playing that role, but in 2025, he finally learned how to shoot, like really well. First, he solved free throws. He shot 68% for his career till that year, then he shot 81%. More notable is his three-point transformation. He had never shot more than 35% from three for the year. He shot 43.6 in 2025. And he kicked it up in the playoffs. Less efficiency, but he shot more, debuting another evolution in his game on the biggest stage. He even hit a game winner against OKC from three, though he was good at banging clutch threes even before the numbers suggested he should shoot them. And finally, if there were any doubters remaining going into 2026, Aaron Gordon shut them up when he dropped a 50 frag on opening night that included 10 for 11 shooting from three. AG has always been a true professional, doing whatever's been asked of him at the highest level he can and having the work ethic to evolve his game beyond what we thought he was capable of. His progress sure ain't bad for a guy who shot 42% on free throws in college. These guys didn't transform their playstyles out of boredom, they did it to save their careers. They didn't really work out as primary options, which is alright because they found new ways to be insanely impactful despite their lack of quote stardom. And again, that's not even true because Wiggins was an all-star starter and Gordon's gotten close a couple times with the Nuggets. And eventually, our favorite star players will lose that stardom too. Not everyone can or should be the one, even if they've had that reputation in the past. I've said this before, but I cannot wait for KD's role player era. We know that man's gonna hoop till the wheels fall off. Watching him play as a 43-year-old backup stretch 5 is gonna be fun to see. Yeah, imagine he just bulks up and plays center because he's too slow and old to play forward anymore. The three-point explosion gave us a lot of players who changed their games for the better. Or worse. And while I'm not so sure basketball has the capacity for another movement of that size, hoopers will continue to evolve, follow trends, reinvent themselves and the game they play, which is good for the sport. So if you'd excuse me, I gotta add my name to this list. I got a men's league game in 6 hours. The meantime will be spent mastering the Robin Lopez hook shot, because field goal percentage doesn't account for aura. Yeah, I'm not on the team anymore.